Chris Burns is from the BBC. She is the controller of local audio, looking after local radio. It's different to a lot of our American viewers. Television rules, local radio is not really a thing as it is in Europe. What are figures like in the UK today?
Well, I think the figures to local radio, we have to accept that we've seen a decline. So 2003 we're on a high, 8.5 million. Since then there's been a steady decline. I think though what we also have to accept is people are increasingly looking at digital platforms as well. And if you look at what's happened within the radio market, our radio stations have become much more clearly defined around one thing. So I think what we've been trying to do across BBC Local is not just think about our local radio stations as being local radio stations, but local hubs where you're creating content that can sit in a whole variety of different platforms. It could be a platform like BBC Sounds, it could be BBC Online, it could be on social. I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, there was a story where a Second World War, an unexploded bomb was discovered in Devon from World War II. That prompted the biggest evacuation in peacetime, the biggest evacuation since the Second World War.
Wow.
Of that particular area. The local radio station naturally stayed on air, but what they also did was they created a live page, and the content from the local radio station fed that live page. That live page was seen by 6 million people. So I've believed for a long time that, local has got great storytellers.
Yes.
Frank Gillard, the founder of local radio, he'd been impressed, in fact, by America and Canada and local radio there. When he came back, he wanted local radio to tell the sort of story of local lives. And that's still at the heart of everything we do. But now we can put those stories on so many other platforms as well.
Well, Chris, let me ask you, when you say the numbers have been steadily declining, what is replacing it? Because I presume people aren't becoming less interested in their own local voices and stories.
No, they're not. I think what it is what we've also seen happen in the market in the UK is there's been a proliferation of other radio stations.
Yes.
And they've all got a very clearly defined proposition. So what we're doing within our local radio stations, we're saying, right, what are our local radio stations for? Very much around local news, but it's news you can use. It's news that always starts with the question from the listener. We're about local sport, passion and fandom. We're about celebrating where you live. No one else really can do that other than local radio. And we've launched an initiative there called Make a Difference, which celebrates unsung heroes. We're also, I suppose, being much clearer in terms of who our audience is. Our audience, to me, are the people who love where they live, and they're also the people who got us through the pandemic. That's our audience.
Is it harder to stay competitive? Because I know even my parents being from Scotland, their local region now, they look on this Facebook page, a local Facebook news outlet that costs probably a penny to produce, whereas with the traditional local BBC radio, you've got transmission costs, you've got staff costs, engineering.
Look, I think one of the challenges of local, there are other parts of the market now that can be even more local. And that's why I think hyperlocal. So if we focus around those things that very often the BBC does incredibly well, like local news, like calling people to account, like local sport, because you've got the rights there. And also I think about celebrating unsung heroes, because everybody likes to be acknowledged by their peers in their community. If we take the Make a Difference Awards, which are now an annual event across all 39 local radio stations, this year I think around 60% of the nominations came through social. And what was really interesting was the way in which previous winners were using local Facebook group sites to plug the awards and to connect others in. So it's about us, I think, connecting with all those other local aspects rather than you thinking we're the only ones here.
Yeah.
We're not, and we need to acknowledge that.
Do you find it harder, Chris, finally, within the structure of the BBC, when, things go in and out of vogue and sometimes more money goes towards World Service or to different parts of the organisation, to keep flying the flag for local radio and shouting for its importance?
Not at all. I'm absolutely passionate about radio, and I'm passionate about local, which is one of the reasons why I feel very privileged to do this job. And I think, though, we have to make our case, just as every other bit of the BBC has to make the case. But I want local radio to be seen as the jewel in the crown for the BBC. What's the great thing again about local radio? We are in every place across England. We're your front door to the rest of the world, to the BBC, and we shouldn't fall shy of that. So I think let's be proud of what local is. Let's do the things that local can do uniquely. Let's use all the platforms that are available to us, and let's create content for people that represent their lives. And if we do that, we can't but not win.
Chris, I'm tuning in. Thank you so much.
Thank you.